Thank you once again, Brother Richard, for joining us for Behind the Final Call cover story. And of course, there's been a lot going on over the past week. Of course, we missed last week. Yeah. Maybe we can get into a little bit about why that was so. But of course, we're going to start like we always start. Why the cover story? I am not an enemy to America, which
is right there.
Which is right there. And this is, of course, the volume number 38, number 7, and the date on the paper is November 20th, 2018.
Well, first of all, Brother Tori, assalamu.
Thank you once again, Brother Richard, for joining us for Behind the Final Call cover story. And of course, there's been a lot going on over the past week. Of course, we missed last week. Yeah. Maybe we can get into a little bit about why that was so. But of course, we're going to start like we always start. Why the cover story? I am not an enemy to America, which
is right there.
Which is right there. And this is, of course, the volume number 38, number 7, and the date on the paper is November 20th, 2018.
Well, first of all, Brother Tori, assalamu alaikum. We're very glad to be really back here with you and back in the United States. I was blessed to be part of a delegation that went overseas with the minister. Ended up being a very interesting trip, considering all of us were planning to go to Iran. Some of us got stuck in Doha, in Qatar. So, or as some pronounce it, Qatar. So, I was one of the ones that actually did not make it to Iran. But thanks to Allah, the fact that we were in Qatar, we were able to help the minister get the word out, as he was in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and as these false reports, actually one originated within Iranian news agency, not the official news agency, not the major news agency. I think it's either Tasleen or Tasmin news agency, and they took a few seconds of the minister meeting with students at the University of Tehran, where he had been invited to come and make an address. And it was really so unfortunate that you could say it almost borders on wickedness, because, and you can read the account in the Final Call about what happened if you go to finalcall.com, and if you go to @LewisFarrakhan on Twitter, there are clips and you can actually hear what the minister said. But let me try to wrap this point up. So during this discussion with the students, the minister is trying to make a point. In making his point, he asked the students, how do you pronounce this chant? Bagva. Essentially, is translated as death to America, or death to Israel, because these are the two countries that have been trying to destroy Iran. Now, even though we didn't kind of get into this, conversely, it can also be translated as down with. So if you think about that statement, years, as it was said some years ago, it said down, down America, down Israel. So that's just a caveat so that we kind of get a little more background. But the minister was asking the Iranian students, how do you pronounce this chant that is pretty prevalent at demonstrations? And of course, it arises out of the pain and the suffering of the Iranian people. Remember, Iran had its revolution in 1979. And with its revolution, they had to overthrow the Shah of Iran, who was an American-backed dictator and a brutal dictator. So, since the overthrow of the Shah, Iran has been under sanctions from the United States government. So their development for the last 40 years has been under very hostile conditions. So when the minister is asking the students, how do you pronounce this? When you see the clip and when you see the full exchange, it's clear that he's having a dialogue. Mm-hmm. He's not standing at a podium like you say, "Go Cubs, go." That's a chant. That's a chant. He's not standing at a speech. He's not standing at some rally. He's sitting at a table with other people, and he's asking a question. But unfortunately, this Iranian news agency, again, not the official news agency or one of the major ones that I can think of, took a few seconds, and they tagged it, or they headlined it, Farrakhan chants death to America. Absolutely false. Of course, the American media picked it up, and it spread and it spread and it spread and it spread. So we got a statement from the minister and started to circulate that so that it would be clear what he said. And hence, the opening of that statement is the headline for the cover. I am not an enemy to America. And I think that it's very important that that be stated, because dissent, true dissent, is the highest form of patriotism. That's why in this country, the right of a free press, the right to freedom of speech, the right to assembly are all connected to dissent, political speech, the opportunity for the governed to speak to the government when it is wrong. But in the minister's case, it goes up even on a higher level, because you're not talking about constitutional principles. You are talking about divine principle. So when he speaks, when he corrects or admonishes America for her behavior, in particular, sanctions that were reimposed against Iran, his warning is a divine warning. And we know that scripture shows us that all of the warners, messengers, and servants of God, they come with a message in hope that the people will mind, that they will listen, that they will change. Unfortunately, I believe only Jonah, who went to Nineveh, was successful. All of the other prophets, the rulers, the powerful, refused to listen. So to speak words of truth and words of divine warning is not to be an enemy. It is really to be a blessing to a nation that is on the path to self-destruction and divine chastisement for what it is doing to itself and what it has done. So that's why that became the cover story.
Thank you very much. Of course, we know the minister's article from this week is actually part of the press conference, but before we go there, the main articles, one of the main articles talks about Iran's supreme leader, government and religious leaders meet with Minister Farrakhan. So can you give us a little of what's contained in that article, and what the significance of actually the minister, actually, first, what is the supreme leader? For many of us, that term, or even to have that type of term, is new, seeing that there's also a president, right? So can you explain that for us?
Iran is an Islamic republic. So their form of government at the top is the spiritual leader, even though there are spiritual leaders throughout government. At the top is the supreme leader, and he, in this case, is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He is the supreme leader, meaning that he will serve until his death. There's a lifetime term of office. You have the president, who is elected. You have members of a legislature who are elected, so they go in, they go out after serving their terms of office. So for the minister to have this meeting, and for the Nation of Islam delegation, they met with the supreme leader on November 5th. You can imagine, if you ask the question, even in the American context, how many people ever get to literally meet with the president? And not just a ceremonial meeting, but a meeting of substance where they're able to talk about some issue, some concern, or share some information. Very, very few. Similarly, in Iran, the minister was able to meet with the supreme leader and talk about the Nation of Islam, what we believe. And in particular, that we believe that the one in Islam who is known as the Great Mahdi, this is a prophetic figure who is the self. Iran which is part of the Shia branch of Islam, is a country that has deep and abiding respect for the Mahdi. They have some of the greatest scholars on the planet are in Iran. So if you remember the former president, Ahmadinejad of Iran, when he spoke, he would often say in the name of Allah, but then he would also add in his salutation or in his closing an acknowledgement of the Mahdi and essentially say, we await his return. Well, we believe that the Mahdi has already come. So the minister relayed this information, relayed this position to the top supreme leader of Iran. And Iran is the leader of the Shia branch of Islam. So you're now talking about a man in a country who literally millions of people look to for direction. And here's Minister Farrakhan in Tehran speaking and saying and very beautifully explaining our belief. And the supreme leader is sitting there listening. See, we often, in the American context, and since we are a people who have not been well taught, we have only been taught by our enemy, and we've been unfortunately mistaught to believe that if it does not come from the enemy, it is not important, it is not true, it is not valuable. But here's the minister in an international context with a major regional power, Iran, a major power in the world, sitting with the head of that nation talking about the Mahdi, and also saying that this other prophetic figure, the Messiah, that he is also on scene. And he describes that as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So you can read more at finalcall.com, but I'm trying to kind of lay a kind of fundamental framework, if you will. So that's one aspect, because tied to the understanding of the presence and the advent of the Mahdi is the warning, the divine warning to Iran and to the entire world of Islam, that we must come back to the Prophet, and the warning and the appeal to Iran to try to find a way to make peace with Saudi Arabia, who is Iran's rival. Saudi Arabia, of course, is an ally of the United States. So the minister's words that division in Islam and that America and Israel would like to destroy Iran, and they would like to have Saudi Arabia and Iran go to war. They're already fighting a proxy war in Yemen right now. So the minister goes and he speaks these very incredible words, and then he goes deeper into the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, different aspects of what we believe, different aspects about the divine judgment of America. So this is, again, just very, very important. Lastly, this audience that the minister had with the supreme leader, and there were others representing different parts of Iranian government or Iranian society. These are not ordinary gatherings. They are reserved, according to what Imam Sultan Rahman Muhammad, National Imam for the Nation of Islam, told me. They are reserved for high-ranking government officials, high-ranking religious officials, municipal police departments, military officials, where they brief and debrief the supreme leader, because remember, he's the head of government. Even though he is a spiritual teacher, he remains the head of the government. So for the minister to be in this place, very, very important. And we wanted to present that because we did not want to be stuck in the trap of only talking about the lie that the enemy told. So we dealt with the lie that the enemy told, and we told the truth. The minister is not an enemy to America, but he is a divine warner. But we wanted to talk about the other beautiful aspects of this trip, the international growth and dimension of the Nation of Islam. so that we, in particular, this is from my view, I think this is important in particular for the members of the Nation of Islam, so that they can be assured that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us is absolutely correct. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something that is made up. As a matter of fact, the minister found his name, Farrakhan, it is the name of a town in Iran. Mm-hmm. The spelling of the name Sharif in Iran is the same as the spelling the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. The name Shabazz, which many of our people in their ignorance thought was some fanciful made-up name, is a literal name in Iran. So there is an incredible amount of confirmation, as well as this connection with the one that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, taught him, God in person, or the great Mahdi. So there's a lot in there. I hope I didn't go too far. And then there were other religious leaders, other governmental leaders that he met with as he talked about who we are as black people.
Yes, sir.
As he talked about the need to try to avert this war. As he talked about the treachery of the enemy and what our brothers need to watch out for. He talked about the wrongness of these sanctions and how they punish the people of Iran, and that these sanctions are really aimed at overthrowing the country itself. So ultimately, their desire is regime change and the destruction of Islam. Yes, so you got to read this week's papers. It is very, very important, I think, generally, because in the American context, they have never wanted us to be able to break out of this box.
Yes, sir.
And so they wanted us to stay in this box. And they say there's nobody outside of this box that can help you. So you can either keep trying to get us to be better as we abuse you, kill you, rape you, rob you. Just had a brother shot down by police here in a suburb of Illinois who was a security officer, and from what I'm told was wearing something that identified him as security. He literally stopped an armed person, held the person on the ground, and the police showed up and shot him to death in the street.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So they've never wanted us to see or believe that we could get out of that context. But with the coming of God himself, he brings us now out. And the minister, as the representative, now takes us to the world to connect. So I would just in closing say, we should be careful not to disrespect that which is given to us. So we should look carefully into the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, carefully into what the minister is saying, and we should do a deep, deep study so that we fully understand. And we don't, out of ignorance and a slave-minded mentality, reject that which is absolutely our success.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So one of the articles that I noticed, and it goes to just looking at, you know, the world and day and time we're living in, and the minister being under attack consistently, and some would say even going back as far as Savior's Day this year.
Absolutely.
In February.
Absolutely.
That there has been not a new attack, but an increase in very concerted and direct attack
Absolutely.
on Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Of course, I didn't get a chance to go as in depth this week in reading the articles, but the Akron cop accused of online threat against Minister Farrakhan suspended with pay. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, Brother Troy, if we would consider, when you talk about war, when the U.S. was having conflict with the old Soviet Union, there was always talk of the Cold War, meaning there were tensions and there were skirmishes going on, but it was not an outright battle. So there's been a war against Minister Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam. Sometimes it has kind of been indirect, underground, but consistent, something I would liken to a Cold War, where they don't come out front and present themselves. They go, as the Quran says, they come from the right posing as a friend, they come from the left as an enemy. They go before him trying to sow seeds of disinformation and lies, and they come behind him trying to uproot good work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The enemy. I would say since February, there has been a hot war in the sense that the enemy has boldly stepped out and has started throwing every single tool they have against the minister. So this cop is under investigation now because he posted on Facebook October 30th. How is it that no one has offed or killed the, I'm not going to use the two expletives, but he posted this on Facebook October 30th. His name is James Anthony, 23-year veteran of the Akron Police Department in Akron, Ohio. How is it that no one, well, I'm actually going to read the quote because this is what he said. How is it that no one has offed the dipshit asshat Farrakhan? So he's talking about a police officer. Why hasn't anyone killed him? This is what we read here. But Allen West, a former black congressman in Florida, posted online, that there's a difference between dissent and treason and sedition. And at what point, essentially, his argument was, are we going to deal with Farrakhan based on sedition, which is plotting against the government, which the minister has not done, would never do. We don't plot against anyone. We don't carry knives. We don't engage in any type of violent activity. We are prohibited from committing acts of violence on ourselves as part of our teaching. So we are definitely prohibited from committing acts of violence on others. We are not like the white militias. We don't stockpile weapons. We don't go military training and learn how to make bombs and weapons out of spoons and all of this stuff that they do.
Yes, sir.
So this type of sentiment, in this case, being expressed openly by this police officer, is part of a broader sentiment that we should be aware of. So we will continue to monitor this case. Right now, he's on paid administrative leave, so we will continue. And Student Minister Stephen Muhammad, out of Akron, of course, is on the case, dealing with this matter very, very closely.
Yeah.
It is a very serious time. I'd like to add, however, we are certain that the enemy will not be successful. So let us get into the fight, spiritually speaking, information war, and the war to resurrect our people, and the war to win their minds and their hearts. Because this is our day, but we must seize the time.
Thank you. It's interesting you brought that point up and down. Notice that there's a few articles, and we'll follow up with a comment on just terms of what our position when we say fight. And I'm glad you clarified that we're not encouraging people to put up any weapon except the weapon that they already have that's in their mouth.
The weapon of truth.
And that's
what
their
would we
tongue
look
and their
like?
words.
What would we look like? Look, the Chicago Police Department, just one department, has $1 billion with a B budget. You can't fight them physically. That would be absolutely madness. We've never been taught that. We have been taught to go after our people, to bring them out of the decadence and the destruction and the condition that they've been put in. And we're taught that the most powerful weapon that we have is the truth.
That's right.
Because this world is constructed on a lie. So the minister has said the enemy does not worry about you having a gun because he's got a bigger gun. And as a matter of fact, when you look at these investigations of Muslims, it seems as though the enemy puts a gun in your hand and then arrests you in these sting operations. So we're very clear. We don't carry weapons. We don't call for the violent overthrow of any government, including the U.S. government. We are merely those who are trying to help the warner deliver a message of warning.
Yes, sir. Thank you. But I noticed there's a few articles, of course, we would have to cover going on with this recent election.
Yes.
So can you kind of share with us what is going on, what has gone on, and what should we be expecting from that?
Well, we know that November 6th was the midterm elections, as well as elections for governors in Florida, Maryland, and Florida, Maryland, and Georgia in particular, where you had black candidates running. The brother who ran in Maryland lost. But in Georgia and in Florida, at this point, I guess November 13th, at whatever time it is, there's still a battle to see who actually won those races. Very important. The Democrats now have retaken the majority of the House. I mean, have taken the majority of the House. So basically now, coming out of this midterm election, the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. The White House is controlled by the Republicans, Donald Trump. The Democrats now control the House of Representatives. So it will be interesting to see now how much is able to be done. Will anything be done? It is going to be interesting to see how far the Democrats will push legislation, push investigation, push issues that are for the good of the country. So I don't think the acrimony is over. The fighting is just about to begin. And this again reflects what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. Confusion of the people, confusion in government. And I think that what we find is a deep, deep division in the nation where they cannot agree on what is in the best interest of the country. So we should pay close attention. There are also some Senate races that are at hand. So there's a lot going on that we need to pay attention to. So, take a break from watching The Real Housewives, Empire, Power, the NBA season, college football. I know you're not watching the NBA. I mean, NFL. Well, some of y'all are.
NFL,
but anyway, non-football league. So, but we need to be informed. So our hope is every week to give our people some information, because without information, you're sleepwalking. And you should not be sleepwalking in a dangerous time like this.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. One of the things there was an article, and of course we know that this big thing with the wildfires that are going on, and we don't necessarily make the connection in the paper. I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to read it. Yeah. But one of the things that we're told from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is that we were told to watch the news, that we should study the news, because we know that we're in a very serious time. And we can't think that the things that we see that are happening in terms of the weather, the minister has repeatedly told us to watch the weather, but even as it relates to these wildfires that are going on in California, I'm not sure where you go with that, but can you speak a little bit about the wildfires and what's going on?
Well, right now you still have fires raging both in Northern and Southern California. Millions of acres, property destroyed, towns like Paradise, California. As one newscaster said, it's paradise lost because it was burned to the ground. Others, exclusive communities like Malibu, the playground of the rich and the famous. Many of those areas destroyed now. So we are taught these things are not accidental, but they are part of the destruction of America. And you can read more about that at finalcall.com if you look at the articles by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And if you go to store.finalcall.com, which I think you should, and order some books. The Fall of America, Our Savior Has Arrived, Message to the Black Man, and get an understanding of what you're seeing. Because as the minister Farrakhan has said, these things are not going to lessen, they're going to increase. And it seems like we have the storm of the century every 2 years now. A century is 100 years. But these storms seem to be happening every 2-3 years. So, the minister said once that the God is so wise and merciful that when he issues his decree, he literally brings in his judgment or his chastisement by degrees to give you an opportunity to accept his judgment. So we read in the Bible that with Pharaoh and Moses, I believe it was 7 plagues, right? The last plague is death, not the first. So in the Bible, the God gives these punishments, and they get more and more and more and more severe until the final punishment is death. So I think that is representative of what we are facing ultimately if we do not read, study, understand, and make a decision and make a right decision about what we should be doing with our lives at this time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I'm going to jump real quick and then we'll close out with your comments or anything else. But I have to direct our attention because as we're talking about these things, you know, the article, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad states that the worst is yet to come. But there's something that we can do. And of course, we have in here an advertisement for the 3-year economic program. So the Nation of Islam has had a record of doing something to help the community, and we need your assistance. So I encourage you to go to the 3-year economic program, look right there in the paper. Of course, there's information you can find about that at noi.org as well, but we have to begin to build for ourselves. And in addition to that, and of course, I think maybe the last time, Brother Richard, you were on, you mentioned, and we'll be having more information on this soon, is that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the separation is the best, not only the best, but the best and only solution. So we have to begin to explore that more. And of course, Student Minister Ava Muhammad is actually on it too, and we'll be providing more information on that as well. But we encourage you, we have to begin to look at ourselves as the solution and know that there's something that we can do as we watch and see what's going on in the world today, that even though it could become very depressing and it can seem like it's hopeless, but we know and we thank Allah for coming in the person of a live, real human being, in the person of Mustafa Muhammad and raising one up, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And then we're blessed right now to have a man that we see that's being attacked, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but we have to make sure that we include ourselves in the equation. Not only is it something that he can do, but we're being called and showing that there's something that we also can do as well. So with that said, is there, I know there's several articles and we can't get through them all, and we're not going to try to get through them all because we want you to go to finalcall.com, get your subscription to the Final Call newspaper. You can get the digital edition. You can find the brother that's in your community that you see with the paper. You can do that. You can, I mean, there's several ways that you can get the paper, but we definitely encourage you to get a subscription to the paper. With that said, is there any other cover stories or stories that you would like to make sure that you draw attention to, or any closing words?
I think that we really need to make sure that we get this edition of the paper and study it. There's a tremendous amount of information, and there's more. So also on Sunday, this Sunday, what the date will be, what is that date? I want to be correct.
So what's this Sunday? Somebody help me out.
This Sunday, if we could get that date, the minister will be speaking at Mosque Mariam in Chicago, 7351 South Stony Island Avenue. The 18th, November 18th, here in Chicago. The doors will open at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. You will also be able to pick it up at noi.org or at your local mosque. But we're looking forward to powerful address. If I were you, I would be there. If I were you, I would be there early to make sure that I could hear from this man a profound, life-changing message that will give you light, life, and power, and hope and understanding. If you accept truth in the day that truth is the triumph, it's got to be a good day. It only looks bleak when you don't know what the outcome is.
That's right.
But if you know what the outcome is ultimately, and that is that we as a people will be raised as we were once the rulers in the past, we will be again. And the minister is an example of that. And those of us who follow him and who listen, we are beginning to see that even in our own lives. So that's one. This Sunday, 9 a.m. doors open, Central Standard Time. Program begins 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. 7351 South Stony Island Avenue. And right across the street, 7350 South Stony Island Avenue, we have the Foodie Spot, which is where we're broadcasting from today. And every episode, pretty much, you can come through here and get some good, healthy food and support a black business that is devoted to not just money, but rebuilding the black community. So you need to press all them buttons, like, share, follow, all of them. And stay tuned for more because this is the day when the minister has said guidance is at a premium. So tune in for some good guidance. Come on out Sunday and say I invited you. Say you're my guest, okay? I need some points. I need some points, man. I need some points. Come on out and be my guest Sunday.
So once again, as
I'll
he
buy
said,
you a slice of bean pie or something.
and
But you got to sign up as my guest.
And once again, of course, he said, make sure you on Final Call, that you go, of course, visit the website, finalcall.com, go to Twitter, go to Facebook, go to YouTube, Instagram, all of those, subscribe to the Final Call, and of course, help support the Collective 9. Visit the website, thecollective9.org, subscribe there, as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on the YouTube channel. And after that, of course, want to echo once again what Brother Richard said. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking on Sunday. If you can't, for some reason, you want to be there live in person, but if you can't make it live and in person, please go to your local mosque. You don't want to just watch it at home unless you have to. But if you do have to watch it at home, that's fine. You can do that at NOI.org. And if you happen to be in Chicago afterwards, after you hit Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and you're fed spiritually, we encourage you to walk right across the street. Make sure you look both ways. We don't want you to get hit by a car. And let them know that Behind the Final Call cover story invited you to the foodie spot. They may look out for you. We're going to talk to them and see what they can do for you. Maybe get a sip of coffee. Maybe be able to smell the coffee or something. But until next time, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you once again. And we're talking about Behind the Final Call cover story. Assalamu alaikum. Think that went pretty good? What?